This is supposed to be like the fight between. But I think it's pretty important. Like we talk about the event that led to Fingolfin charging in such haste to fight Morgoth was, I think what we should say is there was the siege of Angband. So Morgoth was based in the city of Angband, which was his fortress in the north. And the elves, not only the Noldorian exiles that have come, which are now led by Fingolfin, but they also start collaborating with the other elves that have remained on the continent. Most of them tend to ally with them because Melkor, well, he doesn't care whether you're a Noldor, Banyar, Noldor, Teleri. He just hates you the same. So they have a common enemy. They definitely are going to fight. So there was the Siege of Angband, which was a massive long siege by the Noldorian elves to contain Morgoth's forces. And just in context, it's a siege that lasted 400 years.
Yeah. And it was
I
pretty
mean, that's
successful.
kind of like Warhammer 40k, Siege of Brax. Sorry, not Siege of Brax, the Krieg Civil War, 500 years. But it ends with the dagger Bragolach, or the War of the Son of Flame, which is a war battle that Morgoth actually did not even want at that time. Because he was planning to unleash Glaurung, the first dragon. But Glaurung was not fully grown, but got eager and went.
Got out, yeah.
So
And he got shot
yeah,
at.
yeah, and his armor skills had not fully developed, so got pretty injured. But even still, it was um huge battle. Many millions of orcs, it seems, right? Uncounted is a proper term, and it is said that the Balrogs came in force.
Yes.
Now, it's never really said how many Balrogs are there,
No,
but
we don't
some
have
people
we don't really
it's
know, but
def-
yeah.
it's probably like, I'm just gonna go because why not? If you're counting uncounted orcs, I'll just say like there were battalions of Balrogs. Why not?
Well, the Balrogs were captains of the military. So, for example, Sauron is the second lieutenant to Morgoth. So he leads his own version, parts of the army. But there are Balrogs, like the leader of the Balrogs, Gothmog, is
Godmog.
you could think of him as like the third lieutenant, or he's an equivalent,
Uh,
maybe an equivalent lieutenant to Sauron in a lot of ways.
but from what we know, it's generally been that Morgoth did officially always acknowledge Sauron as his second in command.
Yes, I mean
So I'm
Sauron
pretty
is
sure.
special.
And we know that the Balrogs really just don't give a shit about anything unless Morgoth orders it.
Well, remember the all of the Balrogs, just like Sauron, just like Gandalf, all of these
They're Maia.
Ainur, yeah, they were corrupted. They're Umar. So the Balrogs are as much as like the Istari in terms of power. They are significant angelic players in this with their own
Yeah.
goals and stuff. So Sauron is one who we know who what his goals were. All of these Balrogs were just like Sauron in some way. They had some kind of desire that was corrupted by Morgoth some way. So, to give you an example, Sauron was obsessed with perfection. He likes to make things perfect. Melkor, when he was Melkor, he corrupted Sauron to believe that Arda, which is marred by by Melkor, by the way, is not perfect. So Sauron becomes obsessed with. He wants to take control of it so that he can make it perfect. He actually, if you think about it, he has a good goal in some ways, but
He
his
wanted control.
yeah, yes, he's obsessed with this, but his methodology becomes, well, destroying everything so that he can rebuild. And yeah, but yeah, so these Balrogs have probably their own goals. We don't know them, of course. And as for Glaurung and the dragons, Tolkien does not explain exactly what they are, but we kind of are to believe they are nearly identical to Balrogs. They are corrupted Mire, maybe in the beginning.
Corrupted something.
Yeah,
Because
but
we know that.
yeah, they mate and they have offspring, which again, it's this other thing that is very confusing in Tolkien's legendarium. There are beings that are Maiar that will mate with elves. There's plenty of them, and that doesn't necessarily mean their offspring are part of
Maia.
that group. They're like half hybrids, but then further down the line, how long does this go? at some point you'll want to ask about Ungoliant. This is just like the dragon question. She has offspring. What are they to her? What was she in the beginning? And stuff like this. We don't know exactly what the dragons were when he corrupted them, but he made them out of something because he doesn't just make things.
He can't make
Led
things.
led to believe probably Maia corrupted.
Yeah,
Certainly
but
Glaurung.
yeah. So the back to the Dago Bragolach, because I think after 4 centuries of successfully repelling Morgoth's raids with such ease, there was a complacency between the elves that
Yeah,
developed.
yeah.
And in this, it was like a massive assault that had been built up in secret that
Yeah.
many Noldor died. The Sons of Fëanor and their faction also scattered because it was such an overwhelming attack. Well, I mean, if you have like Balrogs coming at you in force, that's I think self-explanatory.
And Morgoth, like he's a very divide and conquer, just like Sauron is, kind of
Yeah,
guy. And basically, the siege has proven that when they are united, he can't defeat them. They are too powerful. So he just tries over the centuries to figure out how to divide them. And like you said, there is a divide between those who had, are following Fingolfin, and then the sons of Fëanor, like Maedhros and his company and stuff. There's
and the
problems amongst them. There's problems at the Tellery.
Gon-
The Tellery don't like the Noldor very
Gondolin as
much.
well,
Yeah,
city of
Gondolin. Yeah,
Gondolin.
but there's and there's more cities that come about Doriath. All these places, they all have problems, and like the curse of Fëanor causes more kinslaying down the road, of course. So there's grievances that keep on and going. So the elves don't. I don't think the elves are ever fully unified. They're only fully unified in the War of Wrath, technically. And
Um,
yeah,
I don't know actually because what it says about the War of Wrath is the Valar were moved by the plea
yes,
and mustered. So no doubt the Banyar and the Noldor who were in Valinor
the ones who
came to their
remain. Yeah,
aid. Yeah. Now these guys come, and it is said that the Teleri and Noldors and Sons of Fëanor and their forces did join, but they were not explicitly asked to do so. They just tagged
yes,
along because to the Valar, they're like, yeah, we just need to do our own war. We're gonna go beat the crap out of Morgoth, and I'm pretty sure, I would just say Tulkas was probably the one Valar that was just like relishing this because he
yeah.
loved beating up Morgoth.
Yeah, that's
But
kind of the funny thing is that there's these extreme god figures that can just come and just bully more gods and do it easily because he's weak. He over time gets weaker and weaker and weaker. I don't know. I can actually explain. There's
it's
something I know about a lot in
yeah,
depth
sure,
about
why not?
for the audience. I'll call this the difference between Sauron and Melkor. Uh, it's again, I brought this up at the beginning. Tolkien has this idea, I'm not going to use his terms, but of the spirit or the soul and the body. When Melkor becomes Morgoth, he is imbued into Arda itself. Everything that he corrupts, think of it as he's taking pieces of his soul. And he, like Horcruxes almost. Kind of like Horcruxes.
So it's kind of like just putting his souls into different
Exactly.
aspects.
To maximize his ability to manipulate the world, he makes more and more orcs, for example. Every time he makes these orcs, it's taking away his own personal power, we'll call it. And he becomes weaker and weaker and weaker. All the siege weapons, all the machinery, the things that he builds, Angband, all these places, it weakens him. And what happens is he ends up with a situation where he makes something that's called Morgoth's Ring. Morgoth's Ring is Arda. So he marred Arda. He broke it. It's his ring. Same as Sauron in the One Ring. The One Ring is what defeats Sauron. Sauron imbued most of his spirit into the One Ring, making himself more and more vulnerable. And he basically, when you take your spirit and you imbue it into things to be able to manipulate, you're making yourself weaker, more vulnerable.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah,
mean, like the One Ring was basically supposed to be you could say like the transmitter to control the
yeah,
leaders of all the races.
exactly. So Melkor, at the beginning, was at his absolute most powerful. He could challenge and probably beat some of the other Valar easily. As soon as he becomes Morgoth, and the more that he goes on with this, he's unwittingly made himself easily defeatable. If they actually were going to do anything, they don't, by the way. They almost never do anything.
I
They
mean,
could go and
they
beat
were
him
kind
up.
of at that time they were more pissed off with the Noldor than Morgoth.
Yeah, exactly. And that's its own story. It's kind of that's a
Yeah,
kind of an explanation for the old biblical thing. If
but
there is a God, why does he allow bad things to happen? Right? That's kind of that.
it's kind of like
But
but maybe just for the fun of the audience, even before he became Morgoth and the elves arrived, the Valar did wage a war against Melkor, and it was pretty much Tolkien who just went up, beat the crap out of Melkor, and just dragged his ass back to
yeah,
Valinor, and
and yeah, he
that's
would
pretty